Tripp and Tanya Tripp. Document number 2023 RCCR 01585. Defendants are present in the courtroom of counsel. Good morning, Mr. Tripp. Good morning, Mrs. Tripp. Alert the audience that there will be no video, audio, any type of recording of this proceeding in this courtroom. Absolutely none whatsoever. We find out that somebody is recording these proceedings in this courtroom, videoing, audio, any kind of recording, hope. Please govern yourselves accordingly. All right. I looked at the issue of impeachment regarding the defendant not actually taking the stand, and I have reached the opinion that unless you are a sworn witness, you can't be impeached. I think the case law is pretty clear on that you have to be sworn. And I had a long rant on it was on Earth and Peter doing things related to the charge, and I was responding and then early this morning. So I hope this is the latest draft that I did this morning. Here are 2 copies of the charge, and I think go to page 3. Presumption of innocence. And you see the highlighted portion, and you will see that I have removed the highlighted portion on that, and want to find out the feelings regarding my removing that part of the charge.
And Judge, no objection. The only caveat to that is if we go to that, but I just want the court to be aware.
If y'all believe it should be necessary.
I don't believe so, Judge. I just didn't want to put that on the record.
Ms. Stengel, Ms. Barton.
I don't think it's going to be necessary.
Mr. Rakes.
I'm in court.
All right, so the stage of the trial in which now the attorneys or each party has the opportunity to make a closing argument to you, to persuade you to one side.
Good morning. Good morning. And this might be the last time that I say good morning to you. As the judge says, the state, we have the burden to prove this case. So we get to go first, and then we get to go last. So what's going to happen is I'm going to talk to you. Then Ms. Stengel is going to talk to you regarding Leon Tripp. And then after that, Mr. Reyes is going to talk regarding Tanya Tripp. So by the time it gets back to me, it might be in the afternoon. So when I come back up, I might be saying, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Now, what I like to do at this part in we call this an opening close, is I like to give you a roadmap about where we're going to go. So I just told you what's going to happen after I sit down. They're going to talk to you for a while. And then after you've heard all of the opening statements, all of the closing statements in this case, the judge is going to give you the judge's charges. And that's going to be him reading over the law that you need to follow while you deliberate on this case, as well as to Mrs. Tripp and to Mr. Tripp. So I want to talk to you about the juror's duty. What are y'all here for? You are here to search for the truth. And that's what we want you to do. Search for the truth. Look at the evidence in this case. What really happened based on the evidence? Apply the law to the facts. Again, we talked about it in voir dire. You have a duty to follow the law. You are bound by the instructions and the law given to you by the judge. You're not to become an advocate for one side or the other. Again, you're to be fair and impartial when you start your deliberations towards both sides. Now, sometimes this happens. months ago, I had a case, the jurors went back to deliberate. They were there quite some time. And if this happens after a while, the judge calls you back in, you might, as a juror, is to think about what is inside of the circle, not what is outside of the circle. What is inside of the circle is the evidence that came from that chair, from those slides, from things that we put on that screen. What you should not consider is, again, what's outside. So passion, don't consider passion. Public attention. No, this is a very well publicized case. You can't consider public opinion when you go in that jury room. Dislike of the police. We had some jurors, we asked the question in voir dire, do you dislike the juror, do you dislike the police, do you dislike my office? Again, you don't bring that into the circle. Sentiment. We're leaving sentiment at the door. Sympathy for the defendants, you leave that at the door too. Now, if you disagree with the law, you still have to follow it. Remember, you took that oath to follow the law. So maybe you don't like some of the laws that we're going to talk about in a minute, but again, you have to follow the law. Conjecture. Don't bring conjecture into the room. Don't bring prejudice into the room. And don't bring penalty and punishment into the room. At the end of the case, you're going to be given a verdict form. And what that verdict form says is either guilty or not guilty. You're not to consider the punishment of the defendant in this case, defendants. What can you consider? The elements of the crime, and we're going to talk about that in a second. The law, and again, the judge is going to talk to y'all for probably about 45 minutes when everyone's done closing, and he's going to go over the law that you can consider in this case. Expert testimony. We had a lot of experts in this case. You can consider their expert testimony. You can consider their credentials. You can consider what they say. Photos and documents. Lots of things heard on the witness stand. There are a lot of interviews in this case. 911 call, body camera. We call that kind of hard evidence. Now, a lot of times people don't realize this when they go to the back. You're not going to have those things with you when you go back to delivery. So, you're not going to have the 911 call. You're not going to have the body camera. You're not going to have any type of visual medium that you guys can go back there and watch. Does that mean that you can't watch it? No, not at all. If you want to see any of the evidence in this case, you can write a note to the judge. You can say, hey, we want to see that body camera from April 17th. That's the body camera where Deputy Cook came and spoke to Miss Tanya on the first time. You can ask to see any of that. And how that happens is you write a note. You guys are going to come back into the jury box. We're going to queue it up for you to watch. And you decide what portions you want to watch or how you want to watch it. So again, it's not going to be back with you, but it's available to you if you want to watch it. And what is this evidence? Again, it's the 911 call from April 17th. It's the body camera from April 17th. It's all of Tanya's interviews. That one that she had with Detective Madden on May 1st. There's no video on that one. That one was audio. There's the interview she did with Renetta Du Bois. There's the interview she did with Pastor Hardin. There's the interview she did when she was in custody with Agent Wright of the FBI as well as Investigator Dobbins. There was the other one on May 30th. Additionally, there's evidence regarding Mr. Leon Tripp's interviews. And you can ask to see these as well. Now for Mr. Tripp, we have that first one on May 23rd at DeKalb County Jail. I like to call that one the Denzel Washington one. There's no video on that one, but there's audio on that, and you can listen to that one. Then there's the June 2nd one. That was with several interviewers who came in and talked to Mr. Tripp. And then there was the June 9th one where we had Sheriff Roundtree as well as Investigator Louise Grant, who testified yesterday. Then we have that body camera from March 8th. That's the body camera where they discover where Janell Carwell finally is after about a year. And you can watch that body camera where you see that deputy take that shovel and then he hits on. He says it's a human skull. Let's get out of here. Watch that one again. And then also cell phone records. Now, that I want to hit on. I was on a jury before I went to law school, and again, after these closings, the judge read us a bunch of law. We got to the back, and we were like, what did that even mean? So I decided, and I wanted to go to law school, I decided, okay, if I'm an attorney, I'm going to try and tell them a little bit better about these instructions, because to me, and I was really young, to me it was, we have beyond a dead body, we have skeletal remains. But Janell's skeletal remains were found in this county. And if the county where the death was caused cannot be considered, it shall be considered that the cause of death was inflicted in the county where the dead body was discovered. So what does that mean? It means what I just said. Her skeletal remains were found in the woods behind 2211 Golden Camp Road in Augusta, Georgia on March 8, 2018. So since her remains were found there, that means that we have venue in Richmond County. Now, Mr. Mullis came to you in opening statement, and he talked about parties to a crime. And I'm probably going to talk to you about this almost a little bit more than you probably want to hear. But again, when I started practicing, it was just a hard concept for me to understand. So I like to go over this a lot to make sure everybody is crystal clear on what it means. A person is a party to a crime if that person directly commits the crime, or intentionally helps in the commission of the crime, or intentionally advises, encourages, hires, counsels, or procures another to commit the crime. Now, I want to give you some real-world examples. And again, as a young person, this kind of blew my mind. But do you think that everyone involved, from the person who actually commits the crime, to someone who helps with the crime, to someone who encourages or enlists others to commit the crime, should all be responsible? So whether you're the one committing it, or let's go back to my example of me strangling Mr. Mullis. Let's say that somebody asked me to strangle Mr. Mullis. Somebody encourages me to do it, and I go ahead and I do it in this courtroom. Now, I'm responsible because I did it, but again, the person who asked me to do it, they're equally as responsible. Again, the law does. And if you disagree with the law, we need to check that. Because what the law says is that everybody is equal. Here's a real-world example. 4 men drive to a bank to commit a bank robbery. You've got the driver. He never gets out of the car. You've got the lookout. He stands outside. You have a man without a gun inside a bank. He's in the bank. He's part of it. He doesn't have a gun. And then you have the man who goes in the bank and he shoots the guard. Who's guilty? Under the law, all of them are responsible. They're all responsible for aggravated assault and armed robbery. But only one man had his finger on the trigger. Only one man really actually shot him. But again, under the law, and that's what we're following here, it's as if they were all holding that gun together. The law does not distinguish. That's what parties to a crime means. You're all in this together. Gold star. Gold star means let's note on it. All who are involved. All are involved, so it does not matter who actually had the gun in their hand. Under the law, the other people helped, okay, or they encouraged. And that helping made the crime possible. That helping made the crime possible. So all of them are guilty. And under the law, you can consider before, during, or after the crime happened. Look at that behavior. Again, before, during, and after. The other people helped so that the crime could happen. So they are all guilty. I want to talk to you about the concept of conspiracy. A conspiracy is an agreement. You can have it expressed that they went over those forms with them, and they waived their rights, and they spoke to law enforcement. Now at the bottom there, we also have to prove the defendant was advised of his/her constitutional rights and they clearly understood and knowingly gave up such rights. I believe we can prove that on all of these interviews. Now, if a defendant exercises his rights, one of those rights is to have an attorney present. So if the defendant, and Mr. Tripp did, on that June 9th, he said, hey, I want my attorney present. So what does that mean? It means exactly what Lucas Grant did. He stopped the interview. He stated he called the district attorney at that time, Ms. Payne. Ms. Payne called Mr. Tripp's attorney, Peter Johnson. Peter Johnson was on his way over, and Lucas Grant went in to talk to Mr. Tripp. And as he went in there, Mr. Tripp started talking to him and saying some incriminating things. Now, that's where this paragraph comes into play. If the defendant, solely on his initiative, after exercising such rights, freely and voluntarily requests and initiates further conversation with the police without an attorney and without any request, instigation, coercion, duress, fear, or hope of benefit, then you would be authorized to consider it. So again, Investigator Grant's actually about to step out of the room, and Mr. Tripp starts talking to him. And then the sheriff and Peter Johnson, his attorney, come in there, and he tells him what he tells him. I'm tired, I'm ready to end all this, I'll tell you where she's at. Direct and circumstantial evidence. And again, Mr. Mullis did a great job telling y'all about this when we first started. Direct evidence is evidence that you can hear, you can sense, you can smell, you can touch, you can taste it. So the exhibits, the ring, for example, that's direct evidence. That's the ring that Shadera Carwell gave to her niece. And Alice Gooding told you where that ring was found. Still on Janell's bone hand. But that's an example of direct evidence. Testimony is direct evidence. Any evidence specifically about the guilt of the defendants. So like we said in opening statements, we don't have this crime on video. We don't have an eyewitness to this crime. This is a crime that we get to the answers from circumstantial evidence. Now, I want to give you some real-world applications of what circumstantial evidence is. So, we've been here for a long time, and for me, the days are running. Now, you don't have to write this down, because you will have a copy of the indictment when you go into your deliberations. But there are 4 charges. I suggest you start with the bottom and you work your way up. It's just easier that way. Number 4 is concealing the death of another. And you will see that charge listed in the indictment. And it says between the 17th day of April 2017 and the 23rd day of May 2017, the exact date being unknown. And we picked those dates because, again, nobody saw from Janell after the 17th, and then on the 23rd, that was the day that Mr. and Mrs. Tripp were arrested. But it states that they did bury Tanya Janell Carwell, and they provided false information to law enforcement regarding the whereabouts of the victim. This is another confusing concept. It says and, but and also means and or. But again, that's what that count 4 is. Gave bad information, and then they buried that child on her 16th birthday. The next count is aggravated assault. And that count says that they made an assault on the person of Tanya Janell Carwell with an unknown object, which when used offensively against a person, is likely to result in serious bodily injury. We don't know what that object is. We don't know. So we told you an opening. I know what I think it is. And I'm going to talk with you when we come back up here. But we don't know. because they buried her, and by the time she was found, she was bones. That's what the doctors told you. So we don't know what actually made the assault on Janell Carwell. The next count is felony murder. Felony murder is an intent to harm, but somebody dies during a felony. So it's maybe not like the intent to actually murder. If we go back to that bank robbery example, we can kind of stretch it out. So in the first example, somebody shot the clerk. In this example, they shoot the clerk and the clerk dies. He didn't mean to shoot the clerk, he just wanted to rob somebody. Okay? So maybe in this case, didn't mean to kill Janell, just wanted to get her under control, hold her around her neck. So it's an intent to harm, but not to murder. But if somebody dies during that felony, it is felony murder. The first charge is malice murder. And this means an intent to kill. What is malice murder besides an intent to kill? It's the unlawful killing of somebody with malice. The juries get hung up on that with malice part. What does malice mean? It's legal malice. It's not ill will or hatred. It's legal malice. Again, it's the unlawful intention to kill. You can have express malice and you can have implied malice. Express is just where you deliberately kill somebody. It's just, again, my example with Mr. Mullis, if I intentionally kill him. Implied malice is unprovoked. You look at the circumstances of the killing, and does it show an abandoned and malignant heart? Lawyers, right? What does abandoned and malignant heart mean? An abandoned and a malignant heart means you just don't care about the consequences. It's a reckless disregard for human life, and it constitutes implied malice for murder. I can't think of anything that is more of a reckless disregard for human life than burying a child in a shallow grave and letting her rot. Now, I've come to the end of what I call my opening close. I'll be back in a little bit to go over some of those points that I have highlighted. And before I do, I did want to just take this time to, again, recognize the individuals who are here at this table with me. And that's Mr. Mullis, and I'm sure you're wondering that this is our paralegal, Brittany Hurd, and she's been my assistant during this case. But again, in a little bit, it will probably be afternoon by then, I will come back and I will give you the rest of the state's closing argument. Thank you.
Leon Tripp is not a murderer. Leon Tripp is not a mastermind. Leon Tripp is a man with an 8th grade education who's not very good at technology, who is in a marriage with a controlling woman who lied to both him and the community before and after their daughter disappeared. And we heard about her being controlling. I mean, even in Tanya Tripp's own words, she said a few times, when I called them, they answered. When she was talking about the night of Easter, when she called Leon to come home, she said it took him 6 minutes, I timed it. We also heard from Leon that sometimes Tanya wouldn't let him leave. But what we also know is that Leon was the only one bringing in income to this family. And we heard him in a statement talk about the fact their bills weren't getting paid. Their water was getting shut off, and they were headed to an eviction, which we know eventually did happen. Leon was not the one controlling the narrative of this story. Leon was doing what he has always done and trying to provide and protect his family and his wife, who he believed was pregnant with his child and had cancer. Now, Tanya Tripp's attorney in opening statement made a big deal out of love, lies, and Leon. And while that's catchy, I think after we've heard the evidence and we've heard from witnesses, it's clear that the biggest liar throughout all of this, telling the most lies, was Tanya Tripp. Leon Tripp is not a murderer. And Leon Tripp is not a mastermind. And I'll take you back to opening statements. You heard from my co-counsel, Ms. Berger. She asked you to consider 3 things while you were listening to the evidence. Who's telling the story? What does it prove? And is it good enough? So let's talk about who's telling the story, right? And as the state even put up on their PowerPoint, we start with Belinda Bunch. She was the one who allowed us to play the 911 call made by Tanya Tripp, the initial 911 call about a missing person. And that's where we first hear this story about Leon Tripp taking Janell to go help Maurice in Clarksville. Now, we also heard from David Milford. He was the IT guy for Richmond County Sheriff's Office. He really got on the stand so that we could actually look at Deputy Cook's body camera. Now, Deputy Cook responded to that initial missing person report, and he interviewed Tanya in her living room. We watched it. And in that case again, it's Tanya Tripp telling the story that Leon went to Clarksville. And in that video, we also see that it's Tanya Tripp who is providing to law enforcement whose number belongs to who. She's saying, this number is Leon's, this number is Janell, this number is mine. She is the sole person providing that information. And then we move on to Renetta Dubose. She had interviews with Tanya Tripp, I believe at least 3 times. She had a platform, and on that platform, Tanya Tripp talked about her treatments with cancer. And again, continued to tell this story about Clarksville. We also heard from Ernestine McKee. That was the woman who knew Tanya from church, who also confirmed Tanya had told her about her cancer and her pregnancy. And actually on the day of April 17th, Tanya went over to Ms. McKee's home and told her again that story about Clarksville. And while she was telling this to Ms. McKee pointed out that she didn't cry at all, and she didn't appear like she was grieving. We move on now to Pastor Angela Harden, who we know also had a platform. She had a radio show, she has a following on social media, she still does. Tanya Tripp did multiple interviews with her, again, telling the story about Clarksville, controlling the narrative. She is the only person we have heard from throughout this investigation so far. She is the only one putting out this story. We also know, again, Investigator Sylvester, he spoke with Tanya Tripp multiple times. And she lied to him. She called him. She would call him for information. Right up until the very day she was found with Leon Tripp at the U-Haul station. She called that morning to ask for more information and to reiterate she has not had contact with Leon and does not know where he is. That very day, she is found with him. And Investigator Sylvester also confirms that throughout this investigation, Tanya Tripp is the one who has provided them with the information about the phone numbers and who they were associated with. And again, I know it feels like I'm saying the same thing because I kind of am. Lieutenant Madden also did an interview with Miss Tanya Tripp in her living room. The same Clarksville stories being told. And we heard it so many times from her, it also honestly started to sound like a script. And lastly, we get to Mark Dobbins. Very, very straightforward sergeant, in my opinion. And when he interviewed Tanya Tripp, she told him again about her cancer and her pregnancy. And she even says a few times in that interview, I believe, I don't want to lie. And yet, she continues to do so. And it's not just a simple lie, right? She's not just saying, oh, I was pregnant and I miscarried. No, that turned into, I actually went to Walmart to buy a pregnancy test. And actually then I went and made an appointment to verify that. And even so far as at that appointment, I had my WellCare card in my ID. And when it came to the cancer, she told Sergeant Dobbins it wasn't just, oh, I have 3rd stage brain cancer. No, it was this started as migraines. And then I got an x-ray. And then I got a CAT scan. And then I got an MRI. And as we see, these are all things that Dobbins calls her out on. But the point is that these aren't just simple lies. They're intricate. She builds on them. It's almost as though she's been telling these stories before to other people. And when she is confronted by Sergeant Dobbins that the story about Leon going to Clarks Hill is impossible, she says, well, Leon lied to me. Again, who is telling the story? Tanya Tripp is telling the story. And that brings us then to what does it actually prove? What has the state actually proven to you? Well, we know Tanya Tripp lied, and we know Leon Tripp lied as well. We're not here to stand up here and say Leon Tripp was completely truthful this whole time. They both lied. But what it doesn't prove is why, who necessarily came up with this story, what details of it. You can speculate, but speculation is not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And like I mentioned, not only did Tanya Tripp lie more often, but it was proactive. Again, she was reaching out to investigators about this case. She was reaching out to people in the community who she knew had a platform so she could get out there and spread this narrative. We also know that Leon Tripp was acting normal on the day of Easter. We heard from Willie. He spent all day with me, from the morning up until pretty much almost to midnight. I think he brought him home around 11:40. And he had told you, Leon had been acting normal the entire day. And he had even been at the Tate Road residence, where he saw Janell and Tanya playing with the dog, acting normal. We even heard from Maurice Jackson, who, while he did say, no, I never called Leon to come to Clarks Hill, that's not true, he also said the day Leon did come to his house on Easter for that party, he was acting normal. He was drinking, having a good time, but he wasn't acting out. He'd never seen him act out. And something small, it may seem small, but I think worth pointing out, is that in several of Tanya Tripp's stories, there's a version where she pretty much says she laid down, she didn't feel well at the cookout. And she says she laid down that entire day up until she realized Leon still wasn't home, and so she called. But Maurice Jackson told you, well, Leon, after the cookout, was at his place for the party, they wanted moonshine. And so Tanya Tripp got in her car, came over to Maurice's, and dropped off moonshine. Maurice said that was the first time he'd ever met her. What we've also learned, and what has been proven, is that unlike Tanya Tripp, who had largely appeared to be despondent in interviews, Leon Tripp did have an understandably emotional reaction at times. And that gets us to Investigator Smith. Now, Investigator Lance Smith, I believe when I asked about him, Sergeant Dobbins referred to it as a form of theatrics. Each investigator sort of has their own specialty. And I appreciated that, because we got to see that Investigator Smith's specialty is to badger a man who has just learned that his wife has lied to him about having cancer and being pregnant. Investigator Smith's specialty is to continue to try to provoke a man, again with an 8th grade education, who has been sitting for about 4 hours in an interview with multiple different investigators coming in and out. Investigator Smith's specialty was straight up telling Leon that he killed his daughter. And we saw Leon's reaction to that. Even Investigator Smith described it as explosive. And that was a real reaction, and a reasonable one given the situation. At that point, Leon Tripp is backed up literally into the corner of an interrogation room. And when I asked Investigator Smith about it, if he was scared, he laughed. He thought it was funny. The first thing he did was he laughed. He said he wasn't scared. And he laughed because he knew he got the reaction that he wanted. Now, what we also know is there's a truck found. a lot of talk about the truck. But what I can dial that down to, what we know, is that that Lieutenant Madden, who found the truck, who came to the side of the truck, he said there was nothing suspicious in or around the truck at the time. And then when we get to Sergeant Newsom, who actually processed the truck. Again, a lot of questions for him, a lot of talk about things, but what we do know is that Leon Tripp's fingerprints were found in Leon Tripp's truck. There was no blood. There was nothing that was deemed necessary to send off to the crime lab. And there were some miscellaneous tools and shovels in the back. That's all we got from him. Now, Investigator Hans, I do feel for him that is a very difficult and technical thing to have to testify about. But what I think really we got from that, and it may seem obvious, is that the person whose account is registered to the phone doesn't mean that's the person who has the phone. I think we can all understand that. And we know that these phones that are associated with Tanya, Tripp, and Janell were never recovered. Because we don't have those phones, an extraction could not have been done. An extraction that could have potentially showed us messages between the two, interactions between the two, that could have shed light on something. But we don't have that, so we don't know. What we also know is that the Tate Road residence was not even looked into until about a week after the initial missing persons call. According to Investigator Sylvester, it wasn't until April 25th that anyone from Richmond County Sheriff's decided to do a walkthrough of that house. This walkthrough, again, is done a week after the initial call. And there had been some law enforcement in the house before. We saw Deputy Cook interviewing Ms. Tripp in her living room. But there was no walkthrough, there was no asking to see the rest of the house, to potentially see Janell's room. None of that happened until a week after the missing person's initial report. Why wouldn't that house be one of the first places that is looked at when this girl is reported missing? What we also know, again, through Investigator Sylvester, is he got the Facebook records. Janell was very active on Facebook. What we also know is that her Facebook activity stops Easter night at 8:15, 3 to 4 hours before Leon Tripp comes home. And the last thing that we do know is that there is no trauma to the bones other than post-mortem trauma that could be due to animal activity. Both Dr. MT and Dr. Gooding, both experts in their field, looked at those bones and both confirmed they did not see any type of trauma to the bones that would have occurred before or at the time of death. So that's what we sort of know. But what I think is more important is, what do we not know? What has not been proven to you? Well, the first thing that hasn't been proven to you is that there was ever an inappropriate relationship between Janell and Leon Tripp. There has been nothing but conjecture about that. There have been attempts to try to put that into the minds of you through questions, but there has been no actual evidence of that. And believe me, if they had actual evidence of that, you would hear about it. They would present that. That would be huge. But there was nothing other than speculation and conjecture. And honestly, to start to try to ask questions about a pregnancy or to try to get people's opinions on how the appropriate way for a 16-year-old girl is to dress and act without any other evidence about there being some reason to question that, I think that's really inappropriate. Now, what also hasn't been proven is that shovels in the bed of a truck equal commission of a crime. As we noted, there were other tools in the truck. Willie McLeod told me Leon Tripp did work as a landscaper. This was his work truck. There is no proof of anything related to these shovels. And having a shovel in your truck is not illegal. Without anything else, that's all we have. Now, the other thing that I do not think the state has proven is that Leon Tripp's statement on June 9th, the last one we watched, I don't believe that was voluntary. And you probably understood why based on my questions to Investigator Grant. But first and foremost, I don't understand why Leon Tripp was even there in the first place. Because when I asked Investigator Grant, why is Leon Tripp even being brought to CID, the Criminal Investigations Division? He said, well, it's because someone told me he wanted to talk to me. But Investigator Grant confirmed that is nowhere in his report, and he just remembers it from 9 years ago. So I have a difficult time believing that. And I would argue Leon Tripp should have never been there in the first place. Now, even beyond that, then, his right to counsel. That is a fundamental right. We all know that. Lawyers know that. Cops know that. Normal people know that. And when you're interviewing someone and they ask for a lawyer, you stop. And you don't talk to them again until you have their lawyer. We saw, and Investigator Grant even acknowledged, he went back in. An hour or so had passed, too. It wasn't just a quick, let's finish this up again real quick. No, an hour had passed. And he goes back in there and says, I gotta go through Miranda. Even though he said at that point, Peter Johnson, Leon's attorney, was at CID. He decided to go in by himself to reinitiate conversation with Leon. And I know the state is gonna say, Leon was the one who initiated the conversation. Leon's the one who started saying stuff. But while he's saying stuff, he's also again reiterating he's not supposed to talk to you without his attorney there. And again, it's clear he's starting to try to talk about things related to the case. And instead of leaving the room and getting his attorney, who I presume was down the hallway, Investigator Grant stands there, kind of waiting, maybe getting some more information. And then beyond that, he lets in Sheriff Richard Roundtree. He introduces them to each other. And then he leaves Sheriff Roundtree in the room alone with Leon to go get his attorney. And so we finally see at the end, Peter Johnson is there. Leon Tripp's attorney, who he has asked for from the beginning and who has been at CID, is the last person to walk in there. And he finally is advising Leon Tripp the way he should have been advised in the first place. And so I would argue to you that statement is not voluntary. And as the law will be read, if you don't believe it was voluntary, you don't consider it. You just don't consider it. But if you want to consider it, what I'd also say is that the state has not proven that the statement will tell you where she's at is a confession to anything. And I think Ms. Dixon actually said it's actually just a bad statement. Maybe. But they made it sound like in their opening you're going to hear this bombshell thing. And it's just, maybe I'll tell you where she's at. It's not a confession to anything, and in fact, it really doesn't tell you anything at all, especially when you consider that there is no other evidence around that. Just him saying that one thing. We also don't know when the body may have been buried. Dr. MT and Dr. Gooding both specifically said they were not asked to do a determination of how long the body may have been buried. The state tried to get them to hypothesize a bit with questions, but what it comes down to is they both said, we did not do this evaluation in this case, and a variety of factors would impact this. And the fact that this was even ruled a homicide at all, that came from the medical examiner, Dr. Sandra Reynolds. And she was one of the only doctors that actually said she likes to consider the investigative report. She likes to get all the background information to help her. As opposed to Dr. MT, and I believe even Investigator Newsom, who said they don't like to get the extra details. They don't want that to affect what they're doing. But the one person who decided that this was a homicide is the same person who said those bones to her would look the same as if that person died from choking. But I decided this because of the investigative report and the details I was given outside of just looking at the body, the bones. And even with that, Dr. Reynolds says there was nothing to determine how Janell died. And that's sort of what the state is leaning into. They're trying to throw conjecture at you in the hopes that you'll make a case out of that for them. We had made it through several days of testimony before all of a sudden these questions about strangulation started to come up. And these questions had to be posed as hypotheticals. If I strangled someone and moved their body and there was no blood, would there be any evidence? They had to be asked in hypotheticals because we don't have any actual evidence of any of that happening. But they want to start giving you just these ideas that are not grounded in evidence so that you will run away with that and come up with your own idea of what may have happened based on nothing we have actually heard in evidence. And so ultimately, what the state has not proven is how Janell died, where she died, when she died, who may be responsible, when she was buried, who buried her. They sat you here for a week and cannot answer those questions for you. And so that leads to the last question. Is it good enough? And we'll talk about the law a little bit, but as has been mentioned, the judge will read it to you. So I'm not going to stand here and bore you. But what I think is important, again, is this party to a crime idea. The state presented what party to a crime is. What they want you to do with party to a crime is they want you to say, we don't really know who did it. But that's okay if we don't really know, because party to a crime, we can convict them. And that is not how party to a crime works. Because you still have to know who was involved, how they were involved, before you can even get to the question of party to a crime. It's not just a, we don't know, so vote. That's just not the way it works. Now, briefly I'll touch on conspiracy, and all I'll say about that is there has to be an agreement. And they acknowledge it doesn't have to be spoken, but I heard no evidence of any sort of agreement, unspoken or not. And the other thing I would say, is it good enough? The judge is going to charge you on a lot. But what I think is important is a charge you're going to hear called grave suspicion. And I think it's so important in this case that I'm going to read it to you. And it is only a sentence, so don't worry. But grave suspicion states that facts and circumstances that merely place upon the defendant a grave suspicion of the crime charged, or that merely raise a speculation or conjecture of the defendant's guilt, are not sufficient to authorize a conviction. Conjecture and just thinking seems a little weird, seems like maybe he was involved, that's not enough. Grave suspicion tells you that's not enough. And that's important in this case because of the circumstantial evidence, which we have talked about, because largely in this case it is mostly circumstantial evidence. And my co-counsel, Ms. Burnham, told you in her opening to think of each piece of evidence like a brick. The state is trying to build you a house, brick by brick. They want their house to be proof beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendants are guilty. But you'll be instructed that to authorize a conviction based on circumstantial evidence, the proved facts must exclude every other reasonable theory other than the guilt of the accused. And they're going to point out it doesn't have to eliminate all other theories, that's true, but it has to eliminate every other reasonable one. And in this case, that just can't be done. And the state uses an example of, I've been in court all day and I see people come in with their umbrellas and they're wet. Circumstantially, can assume it was probably raining out. That makes sense, because you've eliminated other possibilities, right? What would another possibility be? These people came in and put their umbrellas under a sink. That's not reasonable. So that's a good example, but we don't have something clean cut like that here. Because consider these bricks. And if we're using these same bricks, and we're able to build different houses, that means that the circumstantial evidence has not eliminated all other reasonable possibilities. And so for an example of that, consider one brick we have, and that brick is phone records. Phone records that could tell you Leon Tripp got back to Tate Road around, let's say 11:30 midnight, and come up with your own ideas. That's why they don't really have a coherent story. That's why the indictment says, an unknown weapon in an unknown manner at an unknown date. They're throwing anything they can at the wall to see if it sticks with you. And I get that that's tempting. But after 3 excruciating days of jury selection, probably for all of you just as much as anyone else, probably especially for all of you, after 3 long days of jury selection, we chose every one of you out of that panel because we are confident that you are the ones who can look at this case fairly and impartially. That you are the ones that can hold the state to its word. And so I'd ask you not to do the job of the state for the state. For all the reasons I've said, but also because why do the job for people who can't even be bothered to get Janell Carwell's name right? Her name is Janell Carwell. Defense counsel has said it. Witnesses have said it. They called witnesses with that last name who have spelled it for them. They put up a missing flyer with her name on it. And even still, this entire week, even starting in jury selection, neither one of them could be bothered to realize they keep saying Janell Carswell. Even reading from the indictment in their opening a few minutes ago, reading from the indictment, which I will tell you is correct, it says Carwell, still said Carswell. It's disrespectful and it's unacceptable. Leon Tripp is not a murderer. Leon Tripp is not a mastermind. I would ask you to hold the state to its burden, to consider the evidence or really lack thereof in this case, to ask yourself, is this good enough? And to do what the law requires. And the law requires you to find Leon Tripp not guilty. Thank you.
I'm glad to know that Leon's counsel thinks it's cute and catchy. But at the risk of sounding cute and catchy again, it's also correct. It's also correct. Because Tanya Tripp was the victim of Leon. She was the victim of Leon's lies and Leon's love. And you don't have to believe me. You don't have to believe me. Believe Leon. And at the risk of sounding cute and catchy again, who are you going to believe, the lawyer or Leon? Because what the lawyer said is that Tanya is the mastermind, but what Leon said was that Tanya didn't do shit. His words. So who are you going to believe, Leon or the lawyer? I'm sorry, I needed to have put more than anybody, but it didn't do me as much good as I hoped. Because this is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. On June 2nd, when Leon sat in that police interview room, his initial response was, why y'all arrested my wife? She wasn't in the truck. Why y'all arrested my wife? She didn't do anything. So who are you going to believe, Leon or the lawyer? And then later on in the interview, when Detective Sylvester said, what happened between Tanya and Janell? And Leon said, ain't nothing happened between them. So who are you going to believe, Leon or the lawyer? And later on in the interview, what did Tanya do? Tanya didn't do shit. She wasn't in the truck. That was June 2nd. So who are you going to believe, Leon or the lawyer on June 2nd? But wait, there's more. June 9th, he sat down again in the interview room. And he said, my wife ain't done nothing wrong except being with me when she shouldn't have been with me. So who you gonna believe, Leon or the lawyer? I hope that's not cute or catchy. My wife ain't done nothing wrong but being with me when she shouldn't have been, because Tanya was with Leon at that U-Haul station. So who you gonna believe? He said it 4 times about, my wife ain't done nothing wrong. nothing happened between Tanya and Janell. Tanya Tripp loved that man. She loved him. Because as you heard in one of her interviews, she talked about Leon would never do anything. Leon was the only dad they knew. He would never hurt those girls. I feel so safe when I'm with Leon. That's what Tanya said. Tanya chose love over logic because none of the other stuff made sense. She chose love over logic, and please tell me that's not too cute or catchy. She said Leon was everything to her. If he doesn't pay for it, we have nothing. He's my world. Talk about Tanya Tripp. This is wrong. This is wrong. When Leon sat in that room and said, my wife hasn't done anything wrong but being with me, well, it still continues to this day because she's done nothing wrong but being with him, and she's still sitting with him. She's sitting right here behind him. She's still with him. And that's the only thing she's done wrong, is that she's still sitting with him as a defendant. And she did nothing wrong. Yeah, she's a victim of love lies in Leon. And he knows it. He knows it. Let's talk about Tanya Tripp. Tanya Tripp took her daughter to school plays and PTA meetings. On April 6, 2017, Tanya Tripp was at the dentist with Janell for a routine dental visit. And sometime between April 6 and April 16, she decided to kill her. I guess she's gotten her money's worth for that routine visit. She ain't need to wait another 6 months. So who you gonna believe, Leon or his lawyer? On April 16th, it was Easter, Tanya took her girls to Easter church, Easter service, took a picture of Janell wearing that yellow outfit, came home, they were cooking out. Leon is wherever Leon is. Told Leon we need plates, we need charcoal. Eventually Leon comes home. He stays there a little while with his buddy Will. They leave. They go to Will's house. They go to Maurice's house, go to Will's house. They sit around, drink, talk trash. Tanya's at home. When Will leaves sometime that night, Janell and Tanya, they're playing with the dog. Tanya's not feeling well. She goes and lies down. In opening, Mr. Muller's talked about the way he normally does an opening and how he does this and how he does that and the various other technical and fancy things. I'm not technical, I'm not fancy. I don't do PowerPoints. I think he offered me to let me use this PowerPoint yesterday. I don't know how to use a PowerPoint. Chalked it up to being old, I guess. But my way is different. I don't write this stuff down. I take a few notes here or there. And what I normally do, I can't really do in this trial. What I normally do is I look to the person I have the honor of representing. I look in their eyes and I feed off what their eyes give me. can't really do that in this trial. Because Tanya's eyes, they don't give me much. Because for the last 10 years, she's been weighed down with the burden of being branded a killer. A killer of her daughter, Miss Stang, as she called her. So her eyes don't give me a lot. But this is the beginning of the beginning. And yes, she's been the victim of lies, love, and Leon, and I'm asking you, do not let her become the victim of law. Eventually, Leon comes home, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. Tanya's looking for him. She calls him. He says he'll be home in 5 or 6 minutes, and he gets home in 6 or 7 minutes because she timed him because she's controlling. Controlling. He's the victim of her? Who you gonna believe, Leon or the lawyer? He comes home, stays for a little while, and he goes and gets Tanya's phone. He says that. He said he went and got Tanya's phone. He said that. He controlled that narrative. Not Tanya. Who are you going to believe, Leon or the lawyer? He said he went and got Tanya's phone. He said he was going to Clark's Hill at some point. He said that. And he said it because Tanya wouldn't want me to leave. Tanya wouldn't let me leave. I've tried to leave before, and Tanya said, oh, no, don't leave me. He came up with that, I'm going to Clark's Hill. And he knows it. He knows it. Tanya hears the door close, hears the car start. And she goes back to sleep. Until Tanaja wakes her up at some point, be at 1:30, be at 3 o'clock. And says, Mommy, Janell is gone. And Tanya says, what do you mean Janell is gone? What do you mean Janell is gone? She starts calling Janell. She starts walking around the house looking for Janell. And she doesn't see Janell. Because Janell left with Leon. And Leon said that. Leon said that. He said when he talked to police that Janell left with him. So who's you gonna believe, Leon or the lawyer? I hope that's not catchy. She calls her phone. She calls, and Leon answers. Hey, Janell is with me. Went to Clark's Hill to help Maurice. He said that. He said that. But everything is fine. And Tanya says, okay, baby. Okay, baby. Just let me know when you're on your way home. And he didn't come home. And for the next half day or so, Tanya calls Leon repeatedly. And for the next half day or so, Tanya calls Janell repeatedly. I think there's a call at 3:52 that they talk about when Tanya got Leon on the phone, and they talked for about 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Long enough to say, babe, I have Janell with me. We did the thing with the tire, the car, the Maurice thing. Everything will be fine. I'll be back. But before the call to Leon at 3:52 and some change, there was a call to Janell at 3:52 and some change prior, and she didn't answer. She went back to sleep. And Leon and Janell never came home. So what does Tanya do next? Well, she starts calling and calling and calling. She called or texted Janell about 23 times or so in the next day. She called or texted Leon a dozen or so times that day. She was looking for them. She was looking for them. She was looking for both of them. And how do we know that? Because she didn't just call them. She called Will. She had Leon's phone, and she went through Leon's phone and found Will's number and called Will. And Will sat right there, right here. Raised his right hand, swore to tell the truth and all of that. Sat right here and said that she called me. And all I hear on the other end was, I hear her crying on the other end, asking me where is Leon, about him going with Janell. That's what Will said when he sat right here. So who you gonna believe, Leon or the lawyer? That's what Will said. And Will said she didn't just call him once. She called him, at one point he could even hear the police in the background. She was reaching out to whomever she could reach out to. Eventually, Will got tired of hearing from her. Will sat right here and said, and please apologize. I apologize for my language. Will said, bitch, stop calling me. That nigga done kidnapped your daughter.
Hold up, Mr. Ray. I don't want any type of comments whatsoever in this courtroom. Sorry, Mr. Ray. Continue.
That is what his friend told his wife. Because his wife kept calling his friend to look for him. Stop calling my phone. He done kidnapped your child. So who you gonna believe? Leon, lawyer, or Will? Tanya calls police. And she tells the police they're gone. She tells police what Leon told her. She tells police that Leon went to Clarksville to help his friend Maurice. And Leon took our daughter Janell, and I haven't heard from either of them since. I've been calling and calling and calling, and I would say calling 23 times without working, or add another dozen or most of the time she called Leon without him. She called a lot. She called, she texted, she left messages, as well as again calling Will. Days passed. She heard nothing. She went to a friend's house, Miss Ernestine. Miss Ernestine said that it was Tanya and their younger daughter, Tanya, who came in. At one point, Tanya left to get something, but before Tanya left to go get something, that child, that baby child, that Tanya, was all up under her mommy, as a child would do, Miss Ernestine said. She was all up under Tanya. And then Tanya left to go get something, and then when Tanya came back, that girl, little Tanya, was all up under her mom once again. Days go past, and nobody hears or sees Leon for almost a week. When Sergeant Dobbins was on the stand, I asked him, is there any known contact between Leon and anybody on the 17th after he left that house, or after 3 something in the morning? His answer was no. I asked him about the 18th, his answer was no. I asked him about the 19th, his answer was no. The 20th, no. The 21st, no. The 22nd. Nobody saw or heard from Leon or Janell for a week after they left. Now they talk about Janell's Facebook activity stopping around 8:15. Because the way it works is you can do a warrant to find out what someone did on Facebook. That is what the officer said they did. But what about what they said they didn't? What about Snapchat? And they said on the video, she uses Snapchat. Well, get a warrant for Snapchat. She uses Instagram. Well, get a warrant for Instagram. But they didn't. Somewhere around the 23rd of April, my wife's birthday. On the 23rd of April, Leon reappears. And I believe it was Assistant District Attorney Dixon who called an interview on Sunday. Let's call that the Denzel Washington interview. Well, the acting started well before May, because Leon brought out his best Denzel on April 23rd. Leon brought the acting skills out on the 23rd, where Leon came home and said, hey, where's Janell? He knew Janell wasn't there. Where's Janell? Really? And Tanya is believing all of this. She put love over logic. She believed all this. She said, he didn't know. He went running around the house looking for Janell and calling Janell. And the Best Actor award goes to and she tells him, Tanya told him, I'll call the police. They're looking for you and Janell. Really? I thought Janell was here. Let me go find her now, and turned around and left. And went and dropped the car off. You got to ride back to Atlanta. Doesn't make sense. But Tanya believed it. And as I look into her eyes, trying to find my next word, again, I come up with nothing. Because she's been weighed down with the weight of 10 years of being branded a killer when she did it. A husband that betrayed her, a community that abandoned her, and worst of all, a daughter who forgot her. So she believed it. And then his story became her story. He said she wanted to go to Atlanta for her birthday. He said he found a job and he was working. He said she got homesick and wanted to come home. He said he gave her some money to come home. He said he gave her directions on catching the train to the bus station to come to Augusta. She chose love over logic. That makes no sense. And even when eventually she talked to FBI agent Wright, every time he would say something like, worst case scenario, you see, she'd shake her head, no, I can't go there. She'd talk about her faith. And I asked him, it was like she was in denial. And he said, yeah, it was like she was in denial. Because she chose love over logic. And sometimes there's a wide gap between the two. This just isn't right. You had Officer Smith, who was successful in getting Leon riled up to the point Leon raised his fist at him. He loved that. He loved that. He was smiling ear to ear when that happened. And he sat there and testified yesterday about going door to door canvassing and couldn't find Janell. Nobody saw Janell, as if there is this thing they were trying to say that somehow Janell never left the house. But who are you going to believe Janell left that house? And who are you going to believe, Leon or the lawyer? Leon told you Janell left the house with him. But we couldn't find Janell. I showed pictures of Janell, and not one person said they saw Janell. And they're right. And not one person said they saw Leon, because there is a week of time that no one can account for Leon. From April 17th until April 23rd, no one can account for Leon. We don't know what happened. They don't know what happened. Somebody does. And you know he does, because when he sat down in an interview room on June 9th, he said it. I'm tired. I'm tired. I want to resolve this. We can resolve this. We can resolve this whole thing. You mean you have information that can put an end to this, that can tell them what they want? Yes. I want to resolve this. Let me talk to my wife. Let me talk to my mom. Let me talk to my kids. Haven't seen my kids in about 10 years. Haven't seen my mom in about 10 years. Let me talk to my wife. Let me talk to my mom. Let me talk to my kids. I want to resolve this. I will show you where she's at. That's what Leon said. I will show you where she's at. I am not going to bother you with the triviality of whether They should have known that he shouldn't have spoken. He didn't have his rights. He didn't know this. I'm not going to bother you with that because you heard what you heard because he said what he said. And what he said was, I can show you where she's at. I can resolve this. My wife ain't did nothing wrong. So, the government, great attorneys. I will never be half as good as they are. Never. Great attorneys and good people. Really good people. They want you to believe that was a confession. However good of people they are, and they are, however great attorneys they are, and they are, they're often wrong, but they ain't wrong about that. They ain't wrong about that. That was a confession. I'll show you where she's at, and I have the information that can resolve all of this. Because they don't know what happened. She doesn't know what happened, but he does. But if you believe that was a confession, and it was, you have to also believe what remained was an exoneration. I can show you where she at. I can resolve this. My wife ain't done nothing wrong. That was not only a confession, it was an exoneration. Not the first, but the last. Because he'd already done it a week previously when he said, my wife ain't done shit. He said it again, my wife ain't done nothing wrong. So you have a confession, and if you accept it as a confession, accept it as the other part. An exoneration. And he knows it. He knows it. Meanwhile, Tanya, doing interviews, defending Leon. So yeah, she's a victim of lies, love, and Leon. She is defending him. My husband would never do anything wrong. He's my hero. He's my protector. He's our hero. He's our protector. She's defending him. She chose love over logic. Did nothing wrong. He would never hurt them. I hope that she's just out there somewhere looking for us. And I hope somebody will find. I hope somebody will find her. That makes no sense, but she chose love over logic because she believed Leon. When she was evicted, when she and Tanya were evicted, Leon came and got them. And that's how they ended up in Atlanta, because Leon is a person she relied on for everything. So yes, she believed Leon because she loved Leon. And Leon lied. Lied. And that's where we are. The state has proven that Tanya lied about being pregnant. And you know, I think I mentioned a little while ago how sometimes when you believe, when you choose, what was that cute thing I said? When you choose, I got it, love over logic, sometimes there's a gap between the two, a wide gap between the two. Well, the state has proven that Tanya lied about being pregnant. And as wide is the gap from love and logic, it ain't got nothing on the gap between I lied about being pregnant and I killed my daughter. Now that's a leap. That's a leap. But that's what they proved. She lied about being pregnant. Perhaps it was because she wanted to keep Leon. As he said, he was trying to leave and she wouldn't let him. I'm pregnant, okay? I got cancer, brain cancer, how about lung cancer? She loved Leon, and Leon was her everything. And she wanted to keep him. But that's it. That is the one thing they proved, that she lied about being pregnant. And eventually, she admitted it. You know, what Mr. Mullis told you on, I think Monday of last week, when you all were out there, and it was talking about their burden. Because as we are in America, Tanya has nothing to prove. Because that's who we are. We say that people who sit behind people who know stuff, people who sit, people who ain't done nothing wrong with except being with him, people who sit as defendants have nothing to prove, because that is who we are. That's who we are. So when Mr. Mullis told you about the government's burden, he said, you're not here to try to figure out whether she did it or whether she didn't do it. That's not what you're here for. You are here to make the determination of whether they met their burden of proving beyond a reasonable doubt, whether they proved their burden. That's who we are. It's not about all the noise out there, all the wild stories and rumors. It's about what they proved in this room. And they proved she lied about being pregnant. That's who we are. And I appreciate, I've learned quite a bit about Mr. Mullis. I know his wife is pregnant, I know she's due any day, and I just really appreciate that. And again, they're good people. I almost had dinner with Assistant J. Dixon a few days ago. Ran into him at a restaurant. And I wanted to be with them, but I didn't want to turn my back on my drink. But good people, they really are. But trial isn't about them and how likable they are, or about me and how, well, whatever I am. It's about her, it's about him, and it's also about all of us. It's about who are we? Who are we? Do we believe in holding the government to its burden? Do we really believe that? Do we believe we go back there and figure out, he said this, she said this, he said this, and draw lines and figure? I don't know. It's about whether they prove their case. I think back to when I went to my father's funeral, actually, in Port Sulphur, Louisiana. And they gave me the flag because he'd been in Vietnam. That in order to find her guilty, you must prove, or they must prove, beyond a reasonable doubt. And everybody has stories, and everybody has analogies as to what reasonable doubt is. I guess I may as well throw mine in as well. And I think about my wife and I were watching TV a couple weeks ago. And after almost 30 years of marriage, I made a mistake. And somehow the remote control ended up in her hands. And she did what I knew she would do, what she'd always do, find her way to a documentary. But this one I enjoy because it allows me to give my explanation of reasonable doubt. It was about this 7-year-old girl. Her name was Mary Kellerman. And how she showed that Leon told Tanya anything other than what Tanya told authorities. They want to say that somehow Tanya got a shovel and she went digging, I guess, or she instructed Leon how to take a shovel and dig, I guess. But yeah, there were shovels in the back of that work truck. And when we asked Detective Newsom about, well, did you check the inside of that truck? And his response was, why on earth would we bother with such a silly task? Ha ha ha. That's the family vehicle. So let's follow that line of thought. At some point in the investigation and what they call processing the truck, he deemed it important enough in processing the truck to swab the bottle for DNA. And he thought it important enough to swab the Burger King cup for DNA. But no one thought it important enough to see whose DNA was on the bottle. And no one thought it important enough to see whose DNA was on the Burger King cup. So we won't know that Janell had been in that truck. Or we won't know if there would have been blood at some point, because he said, why on earth would we put luminol, which is the other product, why would we put something like that on metal? Those seats aren't metal. Well, what would that prove? That would only prove that she was in the family truck. Well, Tanya's prints were not in that truck. Leon's were. But because she lied about being pregnant, this whole case is about Tanya's strange behavior. This whole case is about Tanya's strange behavior. Strange behavior is not criminal behavior. And this is Tanya's Tripp. This is Tanya's Tripp. A woman who took her child to the dentist on April 6th and apparently killed her a week or two later, I guess. This is Tanya's Tripp. A woman who took her daughter to church Sunday morning and decided to kill her Sunday night, I guess. They can talk about common sense. They can talk about common sense. I'll be sitting down soon, and as you know, I don't get to say another word. I wish I did. Because as you see, they'll be sitting here taking notes so they can come back and counter whatever it was I said. Well, I don't get to do that. But you can. When you go back, wherever, I don't know, when you go back into that jury room, you get to ask the questions that I didn't ask. You get to ask. So, she was calling and calling and calling all night, both of their phones. And you get to ask, but she was calling and calling and calling Will, to the point Will cursed her out and hung up on her. You get to ask. You get to ask, wait, you have all these video and audio recordings, yet the guy with the FBI somehow can't record a phone call, so we don't know whose version of the story is true. You get to ask those questions among yourselves. I want one of you. Well, I want all of you. Ask one. get to ask, what did Leon have to gain on June 2nd when he said, y'all arrested my wife? She wasn't in the truck. She didn't do anything wrong, but be with me. And when he said again, nothing happened between Janell and Tanya. And when he said again, my wife ain't done nothing wrong. And when he said again, my wife ain't done nothing wrong. He had nothing to gain from that except telling the truth at that time. And when he said, I will show you where she's at, just let me talk to my wife and we can resolve this, and talk to my mom and talk to my children and we can resolve this. For 10 years, almost. And this is all they got. For 10 years. You can talk about, well, we told you from the beginning, it's only a circumstantial evidence case. You don't even have circumstantial evidence that Tanya Tripp committed malice murder. You don't have circumstantial evidence that Tanya Tripp committed felony murder. You don't have circumstantial evidence that Tanya Tripp committed aggravated assault. You don't have circumstantial evidence that she buried the body and lied about it. Both of those. You don't have now you have circumstantial evidence Leon did. He left with a living Janell and returned without. He said, I'll show you where she's at. You have circumstantial evidence that Leon did it. Yet Leon is a victim of Tanya? So who are you going to believe? Leon or the lawyer? Leon was no victim. Leon was a perpetrator. Tanya Tripp was and is a victim. Tanya Tripp was a victim of lies, love, and Leon. Today is the beginning of the beginning, because you can make certain that Tanya Tripp is not a victim of law. And I thank you so much for being here.
Very theatrical. You know what I am? I'm the granddaughter of a Pentecostal minister. So, I'm not going to be theatrical, but it's right around lunchtime. Y'all have been here all week. I know you're probably hungry. I'm hungry. I know you're probably cold. I'm cold, but I'm about to take y'all to church. That's what we're about to do. This is the story of Tanya Janell Carwell. Not just Leon Tripp, not just Tanya Tripp, but a 16-year-old girl who died the day before her birthday. Before we can start, we have to figure out the timeline. There are so many lies in this case. It's just a web of lies from both of them. But those lies lead us back to the same place over and over again. To both of them. Their conspiracy, we talked about this before, leads back to both of them. Timeline. And again, I know it's lunchtime. Please be patient with me. And I'm going to go through these kind of fast. But let's figure out what the evidence was from that stand. Timeline. Easter Sunday. Resurrection Sunday is what Miss Ernestine said. It was early morning service when she saw the girls. She saw Janell, Tanya, Tanaja. Remember what she said? She looked at that baby's eyes and she could tell something was wrong. She didn't know what it was. She said, I wish I could have done something. But there was something not right in Janell's eyes. That 7 o'clock Easter service. And she turned around and they were gone. It was the last time she ever saw her. Later on, 3 p.m., we got that cookout on Easter Sunday with Will McLeod. Remember, Will McLeod, Mr. Reagan said, that is Leon's buddy. He saw the girls there. I think he said they might have been playing with the dog. Everything seemed fine. We're still on Easter Sunday. We're at 8:15. Janell sends her last Facebook message. Throughout the trial, there's a lot of evidence. She is social. She's very social on social media. But 8:15, the last time she sends a Facebook message out. And then at 11:30, Tanya calls Leon and asks when he will be at home. She says that to 911. She says that in her interviews. 11:30, she calls him. In fact, everybody agrees to that. She said she timed him. It's 5 minutes. Leon gets home about 11:30. They talk in the car for a while. Mr. McLeod testified to that. 12:30, somewhere between 11:30 and 12:30, Leon goes in the house. Now, the next morning, early in the morning, this is some of what Leon tells us. Leon originally said he's going to Clark Hill with Tripp. Now, when he's confronted with the evidence in that interview, he says, no, we went straight to Atlanta. He says Janell doesn't pack a bag. And Janell has no outgoing activity on her cell phone on the way to Atlanta. She's not picking anything up. So this is a 15-year-old, 16-year-old girl in a car, no activity on that cell phone going out. Now there's things coming in, could be push messages, but she's not calling anybody, she's not texting anybody. Why isn't she? Now, and I apologize, Investigator Hans, that is always hard testimony to get through. It is. The cell phone records and all of this, and y'all see I have readers on, so I'm not that young. It is still all new for me. But what he told us was that at 2 a.m., Tanya's phone and Janell's phone leave the Augusta area and they travel along I-20 west to Atlanta. West that way. So again, 2 a.m., they are leaving Augusta. The phone that belongs to Janell, 4001. The phone, 1596, that is Tanya's phone, but they told you, they switched phones. So this is the phone that Leon has, and is going to Atlanta, and Leon tells you to go straight to Atlanta, and Janell's phone going straight to Atlanta at 2 o'clock in the morning. Now, at 3:52, Tanya and Janell's phone are in East Atlanta. And again, that's the phone that Leon has. They're east of Atlanta. And the time is at about 3:52. Now, I asked him about this green dot here. This green dot is an incomplete call that was made right here, 3:52:12. So this is a phone call to 4001. Again, because I need my readers on. But to 4001. And this is from the phone that Tanya has. She's calling 4001. It's 23 seconds, so it's not answered. Then after that, she calls her own phone. This is the phone that Leon has. This call is 174 seconds. What does she tell us about that phone call? She says she talks to Leon. She talks to her daughter, Janell. She says Janell tells her, Mommy, I'm okay, I love you. So that's the last time she ever talks to her daughter. And that call's at 3:52 in the morning. That call is at 3:52 in the morning. And we can see it here too. No other calls before from this number here to Tanya's number of 1596. Okay? It's this call in orange at 3:52 in the morning. Now, April 17th, That's Janell's birthday. As I stated before, there's no outbound activity for Janell's phone, no outbound texts or calls. But at about 8 p.m., Tanya calls the non-emergency line, which is 1080. She reports Janell missing at 8:30 p.m. She says they left around 1:30 on April 17th. She says they left at 1:30. 1:30. And then she says, I spoke to them, I called him, I said, hey babe, you got Janell. Okay, well that phone call's at 3:52. That phone call's at 3:52. It's not at 2 o'clock in the morning, it's not at 3 o'clock in the morning. That phone call's at 3:52. Again, you see where she calls 911 at about 8 o'clock. Let's listen to this 911 call.
I got for this. Batch A, how can I help you?
Yes, ma'am. I was calling to report a missing person. Somebody called him this morning about a little after 1 and asked him could he come help him because he was straight on the side of the road. And my husband told him that he was tired. He said, but I'll come on and help you since you couldn't get nobody else to come help you. And he came in here and got my phone. He asked me to his cell don't have a map on it when get directions. And he left, and him and my oldest daughter, they together. And I called him because I know at the time that she was with him. And he said that was able, since she was feeling good, I asked her would she ride with me because I don't ride by myself, to go check and see if I can help him, whatever. So, I told myself, well, when you on your way back, honey, please call me and let me know that y'all okay. And he said, all right. And I've been calling him ever since 3 this morning, and I still haven't got him or my daughter. And it's not like neither one of them not answer the phone.
Okay, so
At all.
your husband and your daughter or anything?
Right.
Okay. First off, she says it's a missing person. I thought both of them were missing, but she says it's a missing person. Let's think about some of the other things she said. She said that he came to her again at about 1:30 that morning. So why is the phone call at 3:52, right? But she also says, her husband said, I didn't want to ride by myself. I didn't want to ride by myself. There's no mention of GPS. There's no mention of navigation. I wasn't going to play the entire call for y'all, but if y'all want to listen to that call, to that 911 call, you know what to do. You write the judge a note, and he will let you listen to it. There's nothing about navigation. There's nothing about GPS. Then she says, I've been calling him ever since 3 this morning. Well, at 3 this morning, she's not actually spoken to him. But she's saying she's been calling since 3 this morning. And let's think about this. There's a big difference between 3:52 in the morning, that's 4 a.m., and 1 or 1:30 or even 2 o'clock. That's like Mr. Reddy said, that's a big jump. That's a big jump of a difference. And it's not like this is an insignificant day for her. This is the last time she's talking to her daughter. But she wants to say she confused 1:30 and 3:52 in the morning. It's not. And again, we see that list of phone calls. And this type of evidence does not lie. The only time she spoke to somebody on the other end of the phone that she had was right here at 3:52. And that's her calling her own number, because as she said, they switched the phones. Let's get back on track a little bit. Deputy Cook arrives at about 9 p.m. And Deputy Cook is a little baffled too. It's like, why she want to take your daughter? Why did he take your daughter? What did she tell Deputy Cook?
Why did he take your daughter?
Because he said you want to ride by yourself.
And that's the second time she tells it. He didn't want to ride by himself. That's what she says. There's none of this GPS. Did Leon tell her that? Or was it just when they were making up the story They didn't get that detail of each other. The next day, we're about to move a little faster now. We're on April 18th. Miss Tripp calls Ron Sylvester. And that's the first time we hear about the GPS. But she hasn't spoken to Leon, right? So where is this GPS detail coming from? She didn't say it the 2 times she did before, but now she's talking about GPS. She calls the next day. She tells him, I think something bad has happened to them. And then the next day, we don't know about this at the time, but according to Mr. Tripp, this is April 19th of 2017. What does Mr. Tripp tell us? He tells us he gives Janell $400. And he tells her to take the MARTA to the Greyhound. He says she leaves from the house on Arlington. But then he tells another story at one point. He says he gives her $400 still. And just if y'all remember, I always thought this was really interesting. There's a part when he's talking about how they're about to be evicted and they're so poor and he's going to Atlanta to make money to feed his kids because he's the only one who's working. We had to go, I think, to the BP gas station and get jugs of water to cook with or something he says like that. Oh, but you give her $400? And you tell her to go get on the MARTA? Agent Wright said, I got a grown 20-year-old son I wouldn't even do that for. But that's what he said. And that's what she believed, right? She believed that too. The other story, once they blow up the whole Arlington thing, the other story is, okay, we were at a trap house with some drug dealers, and if I tell you where this is or I send police, they're going to come after us. They're going to come after us. Okay? He says that, and they want you to believe that she believed that. She believed that. Sunday, April 23rd. Okay, Leon comes home. He drops off the truck. Everybody knows this happened. No one disputes this. Remember, at this point, there are no warrants for Mr. Tripp. Those warrants don't come until May 1st. So April 23rd, he comes home, he drops off the truck. Why? He's not wanted, right? I mean, like, why are you dropping off the truck? Now, Tanya also says she was driving to Atlanta and her car broke down. Did he bring home the truck because her car broke down? I don't know. But he brings home the truck, and then he goes back to Atlanta, but there's no warrants out for him. Okay, Leon's truck is found in 3001 Woodbriar Court. The truck was not there at 1:30 a.m. Small witness we have, Mr. McLean. It's a desolate kind of empty street. I think you saw both sides of it. There's only 2 houses there. He thought it was real unusual. The keys are left inside of the vehicle. It's like somebody wants it to be taken. He said he thought somebody stole it and just left it there. And then neighborhood canvas is done by Matt. We go to the next day, April 24th. That truck is processed. In the bed, there are unopened bottles of malt liquor, Ice House beer, and vodka. Inside, there was an open Corona Light can, and there were shovels in the back. All right? And we made a big deal about the DNA in the truck. Okay. Janell was his stepdaughter. Janell had been in that truck before. So again, if there was DNA in that wouldn't tell us anything. I asked Investigator Newsom, could you have even told when that DNA had been left? No. No, and he explained to you. He looked with his naked eye, he didn't see any blood. Even Madden said he kind of didn't look like there was anything that had happened in there. And when her body was traveled, when her body was placed in that truck, on the 17th of April, it wouldn't have left any type of bodily fluids or any type of blood. But we'll get to that. Okay, again, on April 23rd. And again, Mr. Tripp had been at the house the day before. Investigator Madden talks to Tanya at her house, and she says she hasn't had any contact. And we know that's a lie. It's not just pregnancy. There are lies after lies from both of them. He's telling them, she's believing them, lies after lies. April 23rd, 2017. Mr. McLeod, right? I don't think I'm that theatrical to go sit in that chair right now. I got this skirt on, right? Sometimes it's hard being a woman. But Mr. McLeod came in this courtroom. That's his button, right? Mr. McLeod did say that. He did say, yeah, I told that B, you know, that N done took your daughter, or they went, or whatever he said exactly. Okay? So he knew what time it was. But she's saying she didn't know what time it was. His own boy is telling you what time it is. He's telling you that this don't smell right, right? And Will McLeod's not the only one who thinks that this doesn't make sense. Now, April 25th, Investigator Sylvester goes to 3103 Tate Road and does a walkthrough. He says it's not a search. And I think somebody suggested, oh, they should have searched this house. Okay. God forbid my sons go missing. Okay? They want to come and search my house. At that point, they weren't thinking that she had done something. We know it now. Okay? So he did a walkthrough. He did a walkthrough. Now, if she had told law enforcement 2 days before when Leon had come home, maybe they would have searched the house. Okay? But they have a good, 18-hour head start on law enforcement. But again, on the 25th, she doesn't say anything to Investigator Sylvester. 26th, Investigator Sylvester calls Tanya Tripp again. She's got no information to provide. And again, she doesn't say, I've been in contact with Leon. The 27th, Investigator Sylvester goes to Tanya Tripp's home. She tells him that she was sure Leon Tripp did not take Janell against her will and that he never abused her. She believes they were both set up. Something's happened to the both of them. Again, marriage is a great thing, right? Till death do you part. That's the best conspiracy ever, okay? We're in this till death do us part. We're not going to say anything about each other, right? We don't let our lawyers do it. We're not going to say anything about each other. We're going to be together. And that's what they're doing here. Later on, he's telling investigators, my wife didn't do anything. She's kind of vouching for him. Because again, they're in it together. They have both done something to this child. April 28th, Renetta Du Bois interviews Tanya Tripp. What did she say? After that, she started covering it every day. Now, even as Miss Tripp didn't think the Richmond County Sheriff's Office was doing their job, the community was. The community has rallied around this baby. That's why this courtroom is packed. Because the community has rallied around Janell Carwell, especially Renetta Du Bois. April 29th, Carl Wright talks with Tanya Tripp and she hangs up the phone on her. I'm not going to go back over this. But the FBI calls me and I'm looking for my child. I'm not getting him off the phone. I'm getting his number. I'm calling him back. Okay? I want to find my child. Again, on May 1st, Investigator Madden goes to Tanya Tripp's home, and this is her first recorded interview with law enforcement. Again, she doesn't mention that Leon came home on April 23rd. It's on that day that Madden takes out warrants for kidnapping. And let's look at the week of May 1st. Tanya Tripp does Facebook Live with Pastor Angela Harding. What does she tell Pastor Harding when she says, hey, can you put some of these rumors to bed? What does she tell her? She says, Leon is my husband, not hers. Leon is my husband, not hers. That's what Miss Tripp says. Leon is my husband, not hers. Also at the same time, Pastor Harding starts doing vigils for Janell. And one of the things that Pastor Harding testified to was that they're going to about 6 weeks. I'm stressed, I'm irritated. I'm not, y'all, we still gotta do something, okay? No, she's stressed, she's irritated, so she's lying to protect her husband, but it's not just her husband. She's lying to protect herself. All right, May 26th. Now, Tanya and Janell are Facebook friends, but she basically tells Carl Wright and Investigator Dobbins, I haven't really been on Facebook, I haven't really been on Instagram. She can't be bothered trying to find her daughter that way. Again, she has that GoFundMe for motels and rental cars and gas. And then she's also making the app with the phony license. She says it's just for fun. Or she's trying to get out of town. Now, a big part of that interview is also her saying she's pregnant. They finally kind of get through to that, but again, instead of them being able to do their jobs, they're going down these rabbit holes that she is sending them on. And there's one thing she says in that interview to me, and it just doesn't sit right. She says, I don't want my baby to wash up. I don't think anybody had said anything about washing up. Now, I mean, is she doing that to kind of deflect from the fact that, okay, maybe if I say wash up, they'll start looking in ponds? Because I know that she's buried. And then she also says she's got active cancer. But they spend time trying to research this oncologist to make sure she's healthy and okay. And that Dr. Levy does not exist. And now, before Carl Wright leaves, the FBI agent, he says to her, you're one of the most relaxed mothers I've ever met. And she says, because I haven't did anything. Okay. He's talking about the fact that your child is gone for 6 weeks, and you're not, I think he said, climbing up the walls. You're just like, I haven't did anything. She knows she's done something. You know, but she's trying to play it cool like she hasn't. So that response, I haven't did anything. No, you're actually playing it too cool. That was the problem. You played it too cool. May 30th. Tanya interviews with Investigator Sylvester and Mark Dobbins. Sylvester kind of comes at the end and he says, I think he interviews her, she gives some more detail about Easter, and then he comes back and he just says, like, why did you lie to me? Like, you know, we were talking every day. You know, the first week or two they were, and then she breaks off in the middle of May. Why did you lie to me? And what she says is, well, he wasn't at the house the whole time. June 2nd. Can't forget about Mr. Tripp. Mr. Tripp had that interview with Mr. Dobbins. And an hour in, he says, I'm being 100% truthful. Now, he's then confronted with that cell phone evidence, and he says, oh, maybe I lied a little bit. He says Janell wanted to go to Atlanta. It was her birthday, she wanted to shop. She didn't pack any type of bags because there were always clothes in the car. And again, he reiterates he gave her $400 even though they're about to be evicted. And then we get to June 9th. And this is the interview with Investigator Grant. What does he say? There's two things I want. I want to talk to my wife and I want to see my other 2 kids and my mom. And I'll tell you what's going on, you know, where's she at and all that. You know, because I'm tired. But he wants to see his wife. He wants to be, honey, let's be done with this. He wants to see his wife.
You know what I mean? I'm going here and so y'all can close this case, man. You know what I'm saying? You know, I'm tired. You know what I'm saying? I want to see my 2 daughters, my mama, man. I want to see my wife. You know what I'm saying? And I tell y'all, you know what I mean? What's going on? You know, where she is and all that, man. You know, 'cause I'm tired. You know what I'm saying?
He's tired. The sheriff himself, sheriff at that time, Sheriff Roundtree, comes in and talks to him.
I'll tell you what you need to know to close this case.
Okay. Does that mean that you do have information that they need to know?
Yeah, I have information. I want to see my family before I close the case.
He wants to see his family. He knows he's not going to see them for a while after. And that brings us to the end of Janell's journey in this case. brings us to March 8th of 2018. And I am going to show one or two of the crime scene photos. I'll let people know before that happens. All right. Janell is found on Golden Camp Road. This, right here, hard to see. Can we get the lights? Golden Camp Road. That's that tape house. That's the house on tape, 3103. And I'm still saying it wrong. Left onto Golden Camp. Then we're at 2211 Golden Camp Road. Janell never left that neighborhood. And I'm sorry, I said I was going to warn before I showed the picture, but I'm going to warn you the next picture I'm going to show is going to be graphic. Kevin Loverland just started renting the property. Wants to see where the property line is. Walks out, he sees bones. They come, they do the dig. This is what they find. Janell's skull. There's maggots, there's leaves, brush over it. She's been put in a shallow grave. Janell Carwell said this is really a case about her. What I think is interesting, her mom gave a lot of interviews, and her mom always started the interviews off the same way. I have lung cancer. I have brain cancer. She never talked about who her daughter really was. The fact that she was a great kid. She was a wonderful sister. You know, she played softball. She got excellent grades. You know, her mom said she did no extracurricular activities, but Lori Miles talked about the groups that she was in with her. She talked about how she wanted to be a doctor. The first time I met Ernestine Mackey, she told me Janell could have done anything she wanted to do. She could have been a doctor. She could have been a lawyer like me. She could have been an evangelist. Could have been a preacher.
Objection, I mean, this is inappropriate. This is a conversation that she had with a lawyer outside the courtroom. Inappropriate. Overruled.
And again, this is Miss Mackey. This is the church aunt. The church aunt. Janell could have been so many things. But they didn't let her. Now, I want to look a little bit more about Tanya's involvement. How do we know Tanya's involved in this? Start with the very beginning. Miss Ernestine Mackey, the one who was telling me about all the wonderful things that Janell could have done, first what she told us, like the first week, Tanya Tripp is annoyed with the investigators. You know, they're in my business. She says, you know, they're just doing a job. That's the first week she's already annoyed with things. And most importantly, she doesn't tell them that she's got contact with Leon. I can't stress this enough. She talks to Sylvester almost incessantly, he says. But she never says, I just spoke to him. she gets evicted. She can no longer stay in Augusta. She doesn't give a forwarding number. She calls the next day. She says no one is working on this investigation. But you saw the sheriff himself. Now, I've been working here about 6 years. I've never seen the sheriff go and try and help out with an interview. Again, it's the last sheriff. Community, like I said, the community was working this case. People are passing out. There are prayer vigils being held for her. She's everybody's daughter. She is everybody's daughter in this case. But who is jealous of her? Her mother. Her mother. We can tell that from watching those videos. And the other thing is the fact that she just refuses to be mad at Leon when everyone is telling her it doesn't make sense. Leon's friend said it doesn't make sense. Renetta Du Bois said, this is kind of puzzling, it doesn't make sense. You have to be if you're a mother. And you're married or you've got a partner. You don't come home and you're not mad. When y'all have that phone conversation and he's taking your child in the middle of the night, you're not okay with that. It's a school night. I mean, she says it's 1:30 in the morning, but we know it's probably closer to 3 in the morning, right? You're not okay with that? I have 2 sons. My husband likes to hunt, okay? If one day on a school night, he's taking the boys out at 4 o'clock in the morning because they like to go and do that early, if I wake up and my kids aren't in the bed, and I call him, Carl Murray, you got some explaining to do, okay? We're not taking that as mothers. You just don't do that. Okay? When he called and told her that, it didn't happen. Should have been like, get my child back home. Have you lost your mind? Then, the calling. Yeah, you see that she's calling the phone. She's not blowing it up. You don't know where they are. She's back to back. I'm calling every 20 seconds. I'm calling. Doesn't go through. I'm calling. Doesn't go through. And her demeanor. Again, she's sitting like that when she's being interviewed. She's making these fake IDs. She's making these memes for Pastor Harding, which is nice, but again, you should be nonstop looking for your daughter. She's not crying. She's the calmest mother ever. When she's interviewed by law enforcement, by Renetta Du Bois, by Pastor Harding, she's still just telling these lies to protect herself and to protect me. Now I want to go back to Monday, April 17th, 2017. The lies start with 911 and Deputy Cook. Now I touched on this, but I'm going to touch on it again so we're all really clear about what Miss Tripp did. So when she talks to Deputy Cook, what she tells him originally is 1:30. She says 1:30 in the morning. She says Leon comes into her bedroom and he tells her, I'm going to help Maurice. That's what she says. He tells me I'm going to help Maurice. But then, when she talks to Investigator Madden, she says, Leon comes into the bedroom to get the phone. She hears the car crank up and the door slam. She thinks he's going to get gas. Those two things are very different. Which one is it? And again, this is the first story that she's telling. This is Deputy Cook. She says, Leon comes into the bedroom and he tells me he's leaving. Then about 2 weeks later, he comes in the bedroom and gets my phone. She's saying now, she didn't know where he was going. So that's how we know she's lying from the jump. You don't confuse those details. This is the last time you're seeing your daughter. You don't confuse those two details.
This morning, my husband came in the room, and he had said that he was going to help a friend that had got scratched Fred on side of the road. When he said that, Fred told him that he had called everybody else, but he couldn't get him. So he said that would he come help, and he did. So I didn't know at the time that my daughter went with him. And so my baby girl came in the room and she said, "Mommy, where'd Janell?" I said, "Ain't she back there asleep?" And she said, "No, she gone." So I get stuff go through the house. So I called my cell phone because he has my phone because he has the map on it to get to where he can find his friend everywhere.
Okay.
So I called my phone and I said, "Honey," I said, "You got Janell?" And he said, "Yeah, I have Janell." I said, "Okay." I said, "Have y'all got close to where he is or whatever?" And he said, "Nah, baby, we just got on the road." He said, "I just found the right exit to get off on." And he was saying something healed.
They're just finding the right exit or so. This is 3:56 in the morning, right, according to the phone records. But she said 1:30. Okay, so we got lies coming from the body camera. And she says here, she called him and she asked him, "You got Janell?"
And then about 11:30, I had called him.
And this is when she talks to Investigator Madden.
And I called my phone because he had mine. And I said, when he answered, and before I could even say anything to him, he said, "Babe, I got Janell." And I said, "Okay." And then I started.
Janell or Tanya?
We call her Janell. That's her middle name.
Okay.
And he was like, "I got Janell." I said, "Okay." He said, I was meant to tell you that when I went in and got your phone, that I was going to ask her to ride with me to help me with your phone, he said. But I forgot, babe. I apologize.
Again, those two things can't be true. She's saying on the first time, I said, "Hey, do you have Janell?" The second time, he picks the phone right up. And he says, "Oh, baby, I got Janell, don't worry." Those two things can't be true at the same time. And neither of those things happen. Again, 3:52. That's the phone call. 176 minutes. She says 1:30. It's 3:52 in the morning. That's when they talk. And again, when they talk, those phones are in Atlanta. And we know that from the phone records. Those phones are in Atlanta. Again, that's the phone number she used. That's what she had right up there. That you just saw on the phone records. But we all know, at 3:52 in the morning, Janell is already buried. Because her phone is going to Atlanta. She never made it to Atlanta. Nobody could ever verify her. Miss Tripp, again, she talks about this phone call. She said, "Mommy, I love you." That phone call was at 3:52. He's already headed down with the phones. Okay? He's already heading down with the phones. She's saying, she's talking to her daughter at 1, 2, her daughter's saying, "Mommy, I love you." But no, that conversation is at 3:52, and the cell phone records tell us that at 3:52, they are already outside of Atlanta. She never made it out of her neighborhood. She never made it out of her neighborhood. Why is Tanya telling these stories? Because her hands are dirty. The both of them. Now, it's true. We don't know how she died. We told y'all that from the very beginning. But why don't we know how she died? If we had found that body when Mr. Tripp came home, we might have been able to tell you that. But what's the reason we don't have any hard evidence in this case? What's the reason? They're good murderers. They're good murderers. They're good at digging holes, putting their daughter in them. Don't reward them for that. Don't reward them for that. she had been found earlier, we might have been able to come in here and tell y'all this is what happened. I asked Investigator Newsom, what would you look for signs of choking or strangulation? He said a ligature. What is a ligature? He said it's a rope. It's a rope. I'm not sure which one it is, but y'all will have it in there. In that hole, what did they find? They found a cord. Did you throw that cord in there with the body? But they found a cord in that hole with her. Okay? That's the one piece of evidence that we have that we know kind of happened. And I said, how do we normally look to see if somebody's choked? The petechia, the eyes. She's skeletal remains. She doesn't have eyes. But she'd been found in April or May. Then we might have been able to tell y'all. But don't reward them for being good. Don't reward them for burying her in a place where nobody found her. And don't reward them for pointing the finger at each other either now. It's easy to point the finger at the other person when you did it together, because you know some of what he did, she knows some of what he did, but don't reward them for that, okay? They did it together. And I'm almost done, I know it's lunch, I know you're hungry and cold, but I'm gonna go through this one more time. Party to a crime. You're authorized to convict a person as a party to a crime if you find that they directly committed the crime, if you find that he intentionally helped commit the crime, if you find that he intentionally gave advice, encouraged the crime, hired or paid someone to counsel them to go along with. Now, some people might think that Leon did this. Some people might think that Tanya, but hopefully I have made it clear. It is the both of them. You can look at their conduct, look at both of their lies, look at their efforts to mislead the sheriff's office. That was both of them. And I have there, everybody gets a Super Bowl ring. Because to me, that's another great way to think about parties to a crime, right? We had the Super Bowl a couple weeks ago. I can't even tell y'all who won, to be honest, at this point. But the winning team, everybody gets a Super Bowl ring, right? The guy on the bench, the quarterback, the coach, everybody gets a Super Bowl ring. Everybody is in it together. They are in this together. And how do you see the existence of a conspiracy? Another gold star moment. The presence, the companionship, the conduct before and after the commission of the crime. After the commission of the crime. Still being together, not telling law enforcement you've had contact with them, not telling them what you know. The state, we don't have to prove premeditation. We don't have to prove motive. However, proof of exact motive is not necessary for the crime of murder. But you're authorized to find defendants guilty even if none of us know specifically why they killed her. But here's what we do. We know that we have a jealous mother. Okay? She pretty much says that in the video. He's my husband, not hers. All this prettiness, why you gonna go someplace else? We have a stepfather. And we have a 16-year-old buried in a shallow grave with nothing but her bra on. Okay? Nothing but her bra.